Thanks for checking out this episode of the Almost Punkin' Up podcast, brought to you by that'sgoodenough.for me.com. My name is Daniel, and I go by the pen name Rizchex. On this episode, we talk to Diesel Dave Lake of the band Diesel Boy. We talk about the 30th anniversary of their debut album Cock Rock and their upcoming tour in which they plan to play the album in its entirety for the first time live. We also talk about what else they have planned for the shows, a little bit of the band's history, the writing process, and what they have planned next for new music. And if you listen in, you can find out if they're planning on releasing a new album anytime soon. So let's get into it.
Yeah, you're punk enough. Well, yeah, that's good enough for me.
All right, well, we're here with Diesel Dave Lake from the band Diesel Boy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I saw the news recently came out, the 30th anniversary of Cock Rock, and you're going to play some shows and play the whole album in entirety.
We are. It's been a work in progress. We're almost there. We've got, we're like 90% of the way there. There are many songs that we have not played in a very long time. It's been challenging, and a nice had to go back and put the record on and relearn some of these things, but yeah, it's been fun. We've never in the history of the band done a full album playthrough. I mean, I guess that's because we took a 20-year break, and back then it would have been weird to play the whole record. Nobody was doing that or nostalgic for that. So yeah, this is our first time doing it. I guess I won't say too much for the people who are coming out to see it, but we got a few surprises. But yeah, we'll play the whole thing. We'll play all the songs and some other stuff. It's been fun.
Yeah, that's what I saw. The press release I got said that it was the first time you played the whole album in its entirety. So even, I guess, when you first released it, you never played the entire album, live.
I guess I don't really, I mean, I did find, like, I was watching an old video of from our first tour. We were on tour with Strung Out, and I was surprised that a couple of these songs, I was like, oh, I guess we did play that at one point. So, but I think even then, we had other songs that were probably, I don't know that we would have played stuff not from the record, but somehow we must have filled 30 or 45 minutes. The record's only a half an hour or so,
yeah.
But for sure we didn't play every song. I feel like there's just no way we did that, but most of them probably back then, but a lot of them since got buried and, have stayed that way for 30 years. And some we've played every show ever since. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned there'll be other songs, and it says here that you're going to play some fan favorites from across your catalog. Is there any hints you can give us to the set list? Is it going to be something that's going to be revolving and changing throughout the tour? Are we going to hear Punk Rock Girl cover still?
You will hear Punk Rock Girl. The set list will not be revolving. We don't do enough shows that we can be that flexible. So, we've been working on a set list, and it's the same one that we'll play. We sort of figured that we would break up the record into two chunks. So we'll come out and play a few songs, and then we'll do side A of the record, and then play a few other songs, and then play side B of the record, and then a few more, and call it. We have been working on, I don't know whether this will make the set list, but we've been working on like a Mad Libs kind of song that would change every night, where we ask the crowd for certain things, and then we basically make a unique song on the spot for every show and every city. It's a little tricky. And we haven't, we've just been working on it in practice. So, the actual execution may prove more difficult than we think, but that could be something that would be different every night. It'll be a unique song every night.
Yeah, I saw like it was more like a comedian that would play acoustic guitar and play like funny songs, and he would always ask the crowd to like just name anything, and he would try to write a song about it on the spot. So yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Ours isn't quite that sophisticated. It's more like, okay, give us the name of a punk band, and then somebody will throw out a punk band, and then it just kind of fits into the 4 or 5 variables from the audience fit into the song. We'll see. It's again, we'll see how it goes, but if all goes well, it's called Best Gig Ever. If all goes well, you'll be hearing Best Gig Ever. And then, um, there's a few, well, one song from Cock Rock we sort of reworked in kind of a different arrangement. So I don't want to say too much, but,
Hmm.
probably people, well, I know people won't have heard it like this before. So
Okay.
be a few unexpected things too.
Yeah, I like the idea of splitting it up with some other songs in between. Not that you don't want to hear the whole album front to back, but just to mix it up.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the right way or the wrong way is. My
Hmm.
thinking was that if Cock Rock is not your favorite album of ours,
Sure,
or you
sure.
don't know it, that at least then you get a few songs in between side A
Hmm.
and side
Exactly.
B. So yeah.
Well, how did this come about? How did the whole idea of obviously it's the 30th anniversary, but well, what made you decide that let's go out and play some shows and play the whole album?
I think we just all thought it would be fun. It's something we've
Okay.
never done. It's nice to sort of, I don't know if challenge yourself is the right word, but uh, it was just a process we hadn't done before. And, I thought it would be interesting to kind of revisit these songs from 30 years ago. Obviously,
Mm.
the album is one that resonates with our fans. It's like, sold the most copies back when records were still being sold. And,
Hmm.
it still racks up the most streams online. So it's obviously a record that people like. And, I don't know that it would work as well for all of our records, but since, the timing was right for, its 30th birthday. It seemed like, well, shit, let's spend our 2026 doing 30th anniversary shows. And it's a thing. Other bands, do it too. And, maybe we'll do it in Europe next year for the 31st birthday. But,
Sure.
I don't know. It just seemed like a cool, different kind of thing. And, we've been back at it for a few years and thought we would just seem like the time was right.
Yeah, there's so some of the songs sound like you haven't played them in probably close to 30 years. Had to
Correct.
relearn, like you said. How do you feel about some of those songs now? There some songs that at this point of your life uh, you like better. Maybe you reflect on and like you said, maybe you changing some stuff. Maybe you would have written them differently. How's it been the reflection on playing songs that you wrote 30 years ago?
Yeah. So for the most part, there's a couple of songs that, I had forgotten. Of course, I remember them, but I'd forgotten, like, oh, there's a lot of parts in this one. It's kind of complicated, but it's fun. It's been fun trying to remember all the arrangements. We were way more complicated in our arrangements, if not the song
Okay.
structures then. So I would say our songs are more complicated now, but the arrangements, there's a couple that are like fairly challenging. Um, and there's really only been a couple of things. So there's a line in the song Andy Stern where we mention Ian Mackay.
Hmm.
And when we recorded it, I didn't know that his name was pronounced Mackay. So I say McKay on the record,
Oh, okay.
and of course it rhymes with something. So
Sure.
so I've changed that to update my my current knowledge, which is embarrassing. And I'd say, the only other one that sort of makes me cringe is True Drew. And
Yeah.
it's specific to a place and time, and
Yeah.
I would be the first to acknowledge that we were trying to be brash and a little crude, and we certainly were effective in that. So I made I was writing on Instagram. I've been doing a series of posts, like sort of looking back at the songs on this record, and one of the things I said about True Drew is that my sort of workaround is that I'm not singing the chorus, which is the sort of crudest
Oh,
part.
okay.
I let the rest of the band sing that part, and I sing
Okay.
around it. So
Okay.
they can hold their nose and swallow while I
Hmm.
just dance around it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, for the most part, it's been fun to revisit the songs.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know, that True Drew is a song about Drew Barrymore. And yeah, if you were, you know, a teenager or younger or around that age back in the 90s, you probably had a crush on Drew Barrymore. So
I rhyme her four-letter name with another four-letter word. Um, yeah.
I think if she ever did hear the song, she'd be a good sport about it. So,
I hope so. We
well,
certainly didn't mean any disrespect.
well, looking at the tour schedule, you're starting off in the Pacific Northwest, and you're playing with Evelyn's Casket, which is a band I don't really know much about, other than they're a horror punk kind of band, and they're look like they're from Washington also. So, have you played with them before? Was this something that a local band that you knew of, or
Yeah, they're friendly with our guitar player Jack, who grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, I've been here for 25 years, and three of the four of us are in Seattle these days.
okay?
But Jack, in addition to playing guitar in Diesel Boy, Jack fronts his own band, and he does a lot of shows and does a lot of playing. So he knows like everyone in every band around here.
Okay.
So he suggested them. So yeah, that's how that we have not, I have not played with them before, but Jack has with his other band, which is called Me Grimlock.
Me Grimlock. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of band is that? Is it same kind of similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're a little more, definitely pop punk, a little more kind of shreddy guitars. You know, it's one of our challenges. Challenges isn't the right word, but it amuses me. Jack is always angling to put in some meedlies
Yeah.
and some, as much guitar shredding stuff in our songs as he can.
Yeah, I
So
watched. I
just
watched.
just imagine a band where Jack gets to do all of that stuff as much as he wants. And he's also the front man, so he gets to sing instead of just harmonize.
Yeah, I watched a video of you playing live last about a year ago. I think it was at Reggie's or something in Chicago, just to see how you sounded live now. And I saw him. He was shredding on some of the
Yeah,
songs.
he's a shredder.
Then you're playing in July. It's called the Fourth Corner Punk Fest. I don't know much about that, but
Yeah, it's I think it's maybe only its third year, but
okay.
each year it's gotten bigger and better. I think it was one day last year. Last year I think they had Strung Out and maybe Teenage Bottle Rocket, and then it moved to 2 days this year, which is great. And it's kind of the only big punk festival in this part of the country. So, I was stoked to get asked to do it. And, it's a great lineup. It's got Bouncing Souls and Suicide
Okay.
Machines. And
All
I
right.
think
Yeah.
our day has Pennywise and the Vandals. I think Authority Zero's playing Bad Cop. So it's like
Oh wow. Yeah. Sounds
and
great.
then and then there's a side stage that has nothing. I think it's like 10 or 12 bands from the Pacific Northwest. So I didn't go last year, so it'll be my first year going, but I heard it was great. And excited to have a good punk festival in the Northwest, and even more excited to get to play and to hopefully watch the show, but both days.
Yeah, that lineup sounds really great. Sounds
Yeah.
fantastic. And then you're gonna finally move a little. Well, you're gonna go through Canada and a little bit on the East Coast. And you're playing with the Rins. That's Aaron Mackenzie's of the Doped Up Dollies and Big D. Correct, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
They
She's got a
go
ska
ahead.
punk band.
Yeah. Well, I've heard their album, but that's more like an EP, and I believe they only have 5 songs. But if they're
Well,
opening,
I hope they have more than that, because
or they
they're gonna
okay.
need to fill more time than 5 songs worth. So
Okay, okay.
I'm
Well,
sure they do. Yeah.
hopefully they got some new stuff. I've only heard their EP that they put out that has about 5 songs on it. It's good. I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I'm excited. It's always fun to bring out bands that we like,
Mhm.
and um, you know, uh,
How did that come about? That come about with another relationship with
uh,
somebody else in your band, or
they are friendly. I mean, I don't know how these things come up.
okay,
Booking agents, friends.
sure.
Our agent does book Aaron's other band, the Doped Up Dollies. So,
Hmm.
she knew our agent, and they were available and wanting to do it. And so,
Okay. And from what I understand, you guys had, or at least used to, I don't know about now, but had a pretty good following in Canada. So
Canada's always
yeah,
been awesome.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. We spent, our very first tour with Strung Out. Did a lot of shows up there, and subsequently, we toured there many times. We did Snow Jam up there back in the 90s, and it was always sort of a home away from home. And so, we still haven't done. There's still a couple of cities we haven't done. We haven't done the West Coast, but and we'll be doing Toronto for the first time and Ottawa for the first time since getting back together. Um, we did Puza in Montreal a few years ago, and we did
Okay.
Redbridge in Quebec, but not in Quebec City. So yeah, hitting a few cities that we haven't hit, a few that we have, and yeah, we love Canada. It's always great. We did Calgary and Saskatoon and Edmonton um, last year. So slowly, we have limited time that we can get
Hmm.
out and play shows. So it takes us a long time to get everywhere. We're
Sure.
we're slowly trying, but yeah, we love Canada, and we always have a great time up there.
Well, speaking of that, the press release I saw said there'll be more July dates to come and some fall shows. Is there any spots, any teasers you can give us now? Any areas, I guess, that you want to go to?
There's a lot of spots we want to go to. We'll probably end up doing maybe two more runs. It's always hard to get these things together. I've been talking to another
Mhm.
band about doing some co-headline stuff in December. The tricky thing about December is we got to stay somewhere like on the southern part of the country
Mhm.
because the weather is not
Sure,
great. We don't want to probably be in some parts of Canada or the
sure,
East
sure.
Coast in December. So, um, I don't know yet. I don't. We're trying to figure it out right now. But yeah, probably like two more runs through the end of the year. At some point we'd like to make a new record too. We've got maybe I think I've got 12 songs done, so we're not quite there, but we haven't had time. We just have limited time for all of it, so it's hard.
Sure.
It feels like we got to block off like half a year just to like learn a record. We're practicing
Mhm.
once a week basically. And if we've got a big project like trying to learn the whole record, it just doesn't leave much time for other kind of stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, we kind of skipped over it, but for those people that don't know or are new to you, the band was took almost like a 20-year hiatus. But now that you're back and you've been playing some shows for about 3 years now, I believe, when your last album came out, do you feel like just judging off of the crowds and stuff that it's most of the fans are still the ones that you retained from the 90s, or do you feel like maybe you have a lot of new fans or that have just discovered you in the last 3 years?
I would say the bulk are fans who were fans from the 90s.
Hmm.
If you look at it, the crowd, most of them are, old farts like we
Hmm.
are.
Sure.
Um, Sometimes they bring their kids, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but there are, younger faces in the crowd too. I mean, I would say they're in the minority, but it makes me very happy to see that there are definitely kids who are discovering punk rock at a younger age and going back and
Hmm.
finding bands from, other eras to explore. And occasionally, I will go, somebody will comment on a post and I'll go look at their Instagram and we'll be like, oh, look, they're like a kid, like
Sure.
that's nice. So they are there. I mean, I would say that yeah, the bulk of our audience is probably 40 plus, but not exclusively.
Sure. Sure. And you were, for a little bit of the history, you were one of the first bands to be signed with, or the first band to be signed with Honest Don's, which is like a subsidiary of Fat. And there was a lot of great bands on that label. Like I like Nerf Herder and Bad Astronaut and a bunch of good bands. I guess it's not really a question other than just that was a pretty cool thing that you guys can claim that you were the first band on Honest Don's.
Well, what I can tell you is that yes, I agree with you. It is cool, and we it was a great home, and we like that we got to be the first, like the flagship band for Honest Dons. I can
Yeah.
tell you, however, that we were very disappointed initially that Mike didn't want to put out our record on Fat. We were heartbroken. Um,
Yeah.
but it all worked out for the best.
Hmm. Well, you had some stuff on the Fat comps.
We
In
did. We
fact,
did a 7-inch for Fat, and then we demoed for the record, and we gave it to him, and he said, "I like it, but not enough to put it out on Fat." And we were like, "Ugh, But at the time, he said, I'm thinking about starting another label for stuff that maybe doesn't fit on Fat. And, he had just was kind of exploring the idea and asked if we'd be into it. And we said we would, but there wasn't any other details at that point. And so we sort of like licked our wounds and, decided, we're not going to wait around. Let's go figure out what to do. And as we were kind of figuring out what our plan B was going to be, he called and said, "Hey, I don't know what it's called yet, but do you want to be the first band on the new label? Do you want to go into the studio with Ryan Green for a week in May?" And we said, "Yeah, we do." And we trusted him, we had no reason not to, and I'm glad that we did. It ended up being great. And at some point while we were making the record, he showed up and he was like, "I got it. Honest Don's hardly used recordings." And we just sort of looked around like, okay. And he sort of explained that Honest Don was like a kind of a smarmy used car salesman kind of guy that would be in the, in the logo and whatnot. And then at some point after a few records, he decided that all the bands would get to make up the part that comes after Honest Don. So for, I think the first 3 records, it was Honest Don's hardly used recordings. And then every subsequent record was Honest Don's something, something, something.
Oh,
so the
okay.
band got to make up what the rest of the record company name was.
And that was what was printed on the like the J card and stuff.
Yep,
And
correct.
Nice.
Yep. And there was a logo, like a little clip art logo for all the Honest Don's records. Yeah, it ended up being great. So
I never heard that story. Yeah.
yeah. Well, if you go look through your old Honest Don CDs, you'll see they all have a different name.
I still have some CDs in a box somewhere in a garage or something. I'll have to go check them out.
I think Wikipedia probably has the list of all the names too.
Yeah, interesting. Well, speaking of the Fat record label, one of my favorite songs you guys ever did was on the short music for short people, the chandeliers and souvenirs.
Yeah.
That's only a 30-second song, which is the premise of the album. And I've always loved that song, even though
Thank you.
I've never had any idea what it's about. And I kind of like the fact that would like to think that it isn't about anything really, but I don't know. Maybe you can finally tell me.
I don't know that it's about anything really either. Like I don't have anything specific in my head when I'm singing the lyrics or when I'm thinking about it. I mean, there's some kind of, romantic longing or, a little bit of heartbreak in there, but I don't think it was inspired by anyone in particular. I like that song too. We've played it occasionally. It's not in the set list right now, but I'd love to bring it back. It's fun. I like that song too. It was a weird period where we were in between drummers. And the guy who played drums on it, like that's the only thing he ever played on for Diesel Boy. Like there was all these bands going in and out, like during that period, like each band, like the studio was just booked with all these bands going in and out. I think Nerf Herder was in there before we were in there. And it's like, I just remember like loading in and, everybody would take a couple hours and do their song. And it was just like this sort of revolving door band. It was kind of cool. I wish that I could have just hung out in the studio for a week to see all the bands come in and do their stuff.
So everybody recorded it like in one studio. I thought it was just
send
in your song.
Not necessarily. I think there was some of that, but I think that, the bands that were local and that didn't I don't think most bands had a 30-second song. Sure. So I think for the ones that they could make that happen for, they did. We were living in the Bay Area then, and that's where Motor Studios was, so we could do that. But not everybody did. I mean, I think Green Day probably recorded their own, and I think there were some of those songs existed elsewhere, but yeah. So I don't know how many actually did, but there was definitely a bunch that were recorded in some short period of time, just kind of like in and out.
Well, you mentioned you have 12 possible new songs and want a new album. How does that process work now these days with your part-time band, part-time real life dad, real job? How does the album process work, and what's the next step? How do you do the recording and all that?
Well, I can tell you how it worked last time, which was that, I had, I guess it was a little different last time because I wasn't, I had a collection of songs that had existed in some form in older versions and then some new songs. So it was more of like a hodgepodge of songs that we were putting together for a record. And I was also trying to put a band together. And so it was a little more complicated of a process then. Um, you know, so this time around, the process is pretty not the same as it was then, but pretty same for all the songs. I write something, I demo it, I send it to the guys. It sits in a Google Drive folder. Sometimes they listen to them, sometimes they don't. In a perfect world, everybody at some point, everybody will learn the songs and listen, and we'll get into a room and practice. And we've worked on a few a little bit. We always like to have more songs than will end up on a record. So, if we could get to like 16, 17, we could whittle down to 12 or 13, kind of keep the worst ones off or, record a couple extras if we can. The last record, we knew we wanted to do a 7-inch after we did the record. So I think we recorded whatever it was, 14 songs, and we put 12 on the record and put 2 on a 7-inch. It's always nice to have a few leftovers if you can do that. So the process will likely be, we'll have all these songs, we'll block off time, and it's hard to do it kind of piecemeal. So I think we just have to get in there and focus on, we'll have to take a year or half a year where we're not playing shows and we're just learning the songs. Because when I'm demoing them, we're not playing them at all. It's just me, programming the drums and playing the bass and the guitars and doing the vocals. And I'm not spending a lot of time on the arrangements. And, I want everyone to write their own parts and to, help with the arrangements and to work on everything together. So, that process just takes a while. And then, once they get to a point that we feel like we can play them well and they're, sort of in tip top shape, we'll, figure out where we want to record it and how
Okay.
long.
Are you still locked in with a label, and do you have a preferred producer you like to work with or in a studio you like to use?
We don't,
Okay.
we signed to Spam for
I
that
thought
one
I thought it
record.
was Spam,
Um,
yeah, for the last one, yeah.
yep. Um, So, I mean, I haven't started talking to anybody about any of
Okay.
it yet because none
Sure.
of it's like a reality yet.
hmm
So I don't know, yeah, I don't know what we'll do. One of the issues last time is that we weren't able to have proper demos because we were kind of putting a band together, and I had kind of, like I said, a hodgepodge like of these garage band recordings and some other stuff. This time we will likely, since our drummer has a recording studio, we'll likely be able to make better demos,
Okay.
something that's not just my home demos, but all of us playing the songs much
hmm
closer to what the actual arrangements would be. And it will be nice to have that, because then you can send that around to people and let people check it out. And we just didn't have a great um, representation. Gratefully, Stefan at Spam was enthusiastic about doing the record without us having a great representation of what it might sound like. So um, we appreciate that.
All right. So we're probably talking at least a year, maybe two, before we see a new album.
I don't know. We had
Yeah.
talked about
Okay.
trying to get it together this year, like record
Okay.
it, um, at the end of this year. But as the months go by, it's like, I
hmm
just don't know that that's realistic.
Sure.
I mean, for starters, I don't think we're quite there in terms of songs. I think we've
Sure.
got 12. I would like to get a few more, and it depends what's going on. So, when we're not touring, like in the winter or at the early part of the year, I've got more time to write, but I also manage the band and tour manage the band and do all the other stuff. So when we get busy with doing shows, there's more work to do. I gotta rent vans and book hotel rooms and talk to the booking agent and, make posters and, all the bazillion things that, you got to do to keep the band running. So I just haven't had as much time to write. I was in a kind of rhythm where I could get these songs done regularly. And by the way, I have to force myself to write. It's not just like I am not one of those people for the most part that's like, I'm just driving and, I might get an idea for a song, for a concept, but like the melody, the chords, like I got to sit down and like fight to get ideas out and get inspired by something. And I got to force myself to kind of dig in and do it. It's not something that um, is the most enjoyable process a lot of the time. I enjoy it once I'm in there mostly, but sometimes it's a struggle. If it's a good concept and I like it, great, but I want the stuff to be good. And sometimes it's just, yeah, sometimes it's a struggle.
Well, speaking of writing, during the hiatus, you personally, I saw, got into writing and producing entertainment content for like MSN, Amp Magazine, some newspapers. Is that something you just thought because you were writing songs you could do, or is this something you went to school for? Or we recently talked to David McWayne of Big D, who does something similar. He's written some books, I think even some novels, and he's currently writing a kid's book on monster trucks, which that's not for
Cool.
real. It's not for real. He's just it's called Gravedigger, but it's nothing to do with monster
Okay.
trucks.
Okay.
But anyways, how did you get into writing? Was that something that you did in school, or something that you just thought you could do because you wrote songs?
Neither, I guess. I mean,
Okay.
I sort of just fell into it. I mean, I was a communications major in college,
Okay.
so I have a degree in communications, but I guess they don't necessarily teach you writing. Um, but as the band was winding down, I took a job at thismusic.com, and I was kind of a music expert listening to music. And this was, in what, like 2001. So they were basically trying to do what Spotify does, but, like 25 years too early. But it was a great job and super fun. And shortly after I started working there, they got bought by Microsoft, and I ended up like relocating to Seattle and, working for the company that got swallowed by Microsoft, and started on the music side. I ended up being there for over a decade. And so, my sort of role there evolved, and I eventually became a web producer, and I was producing content, not just for music, but for television and movie stuff. And as part of that, I would interview people, and I would go to sets, and I would, edit other people's stuff. And so I think just as a byproduct of having that job, it just was something I could do. I mean, I always wrote the band bios, and I guess it was always something I could do, but never thought about it as like a career or something that could make money. I just have always been a pretty okay writer. So yeah, I think as a byproduct of my professional life, I just started doing that stuff more and realized, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And then, I had a blog for a few years, and that got some attention. And then Seattle Weekly reached out, and I started writing stuff for Seattle Weekly, a lot of like, concert reviews and record reviews and interviews. And I was sort of doing that on the side while I was working at Microsoft. And it's a different kind of writing. It's a different kind of muscle. I occasionally would write like features for Seattle Weekly, and that was always really fun. They were longer. You'd get to do a lot of interviews. You'd get to go real deep in something, like the journalism part of it. The interviewing is fine. I enjoy that too. I like doing interviews, and, I've talked to a bazillion people over the years. And, but I also really like the intellectualism of journalism, and investigating something. I wrote a piece for the Weekly, where for a while there were two Queensryches. There were two factions of the band Queensryche who, like, they hadn't settled who owned the name, and, like talking to both sides and investigating the legal issues, and, what was going on with who owns what Queensryche and who's on which side. And, like, I just found all that, fascinating and interesting. Unfortunately, I haven't, I don't get to do it as much anymore, although I just finished writing something for the Punk Rock Saves Lives writing project, which, if you're not familiar, it's Punk Rock Saves Lives is a charity. And I should know this, but I forget what their main sort of charitable mission is. I see them at shows, and I know they do good work.
I've
But
seen them, yeah.
they somebody there reached out, and they're putting together a book in 2027 that's all contributions from punk and punk adjacent contributors. And so they asked if I would write something, and so I recently finished that and just turned that in. So I will have some writing in that. I think it comes out in 2027.
Okay, very
They've
cool.
got an Instagram if you want to go look and see it. Big D is one of the people that I know is involved, and there's others that you likely know. Russ from Good Riddance.
Okay.
There's a long list of people, and I don't know what they were very liberal. With there's like no word count. It can be whatever you want. It's a little intimidating,
Sure.
the lack of structure or rules. Sometimes it's easier if I know, okay,
Yeah.
I'm doing this. Here's how long it should be. But I eventually figured it out.
All right. That sounds very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to go back a little bit. Actually, back about to year 2000.
Okay.
You opened for you probably get asked about this a lot, but you opened for a band called Puss,
Uh-huh.
and it was in a episode of Freaks and Greeks.
Yep.
Just that episode, if anyone wants to find it, was called Noshing and Moshing. How did all that come about? You're like the band. It's the one where James Franco, his Daniel character, is trying to be a punk or pretends to be a punk to impress a girl, and then you're the band playing at the club. So
Yeah.
how did that come about? And
Yeah, I went to high school with this guy Jake Kasdan, who you know his father was a filmmaker, and when we were in high school, he was writing scripts and putting on plays at theaters in Los Angeles. And shortly after graduation, he started making movies and started kind of small, and now he makes all the Jumanji movies. He's a big time Hollywood director. Sometime in between, his first movie and today, he was working on this TV show with Judd Apatow, who was also unknown kind of then. And so the two of them were developing the show. They had an episode that called for a punk band, and so Jake knew who to call. I was his friend who played in a punk band, so I got a call one day, and he said, "Hey, I'm working on this show. We need a punk band. Do you guys want to do it?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, we want to do it." So, it was not it was a new show, and none of those people who have all gone on to become, big stars, none of them were that yet. It was, we didn't know what it was. It was just it was a different from a normal day on the road for us, but certainly wasn't, not that it didn't feel like a big deal, but it wasn't like we were on some big budget movie or something. It was just, a TV show. Who knows what will become of it. But yeah, ended up being, it was a super fun experience. We got to go to the wardrobe department, and they had all these racks of 80s punk clothes. For those who don't know, it takes place in 1981. So we were supposed to be a 1980s punk band. So we got all outfitted in these punk garb, and they went to hair and makeup, and they put my hair into a mohawk, and then we started shooting, and the club filled up with all these punk rock extras that they had paid to look punk and be there and pretend like we were their favorite band. And we sort of ran through our song once. They were filming us sort of first playing, and we ran through half a song, and Jake yelled cut, and he runs up to the stage, and he's like, "Oh, you guys look great, but you're smiling too much. You look like you're having too much fun. You guys need to look tougher. You need to look like a punk band." I was like, okay. So yeah, it was a super fun, I think we spent one day, the day before, we went to wardrobe and got fitted and all that stuff. And then we showed up on set, and it basically took most of a day. We did our scenes and, hung out at Al's Bar in downtown LA, which is where they shot it. And, then when they shoot all the dialogue scenes, we were on stage playing, but you have to mime, so you don't screw up the dialogue. So we're standing up there just kind of, with our guitars on, kind of miming. And there's stuntmen crowd surfing, and it was wild. I mean, it was really, was a super fun day. And then, sort of the kicker is the show did so bad in the ratings when it was on TV that it got canceled before our episode actually aired. So
really?
it never ran on NBC. Like I think there were 17 episodes. Ours was number 15, and it got canceled after 12. So we were like, great. No one's ever going to see this. And then it turns out, it became a cult classic, and,
Sure.
it was been on DVD several times, and, it's been on streaming forever. And it's amazing to get to, what a cool little footnote, in our career that we got to be the band opening for Puss on Freaks and Geeks, who you never see. And by the way, I think our music is the only music in the show that was not recorded before 1981.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then all the
cool.
rest of it's
Yeah.
it's very period accurate,
Yeah, because you play, I think you played Titty Twister.
And not Titty Twister, but it was all songs off Cock Rock.
Oh,
Yep.
off Cock Rock, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else before we wrap up here that you want to promote? Do you have any other? I know at one point you had a side band called the Dirty Outs. Is there anything else you got going on that you want to
Well,
promote?
the Dirty Outs, a label called People of Punk Rock in Canada, is putting out the Dirty Outs record. Our entire recorded output of 11 songs is getting a sort of a micro LP pressing. So,
Oh, a vinyl?
Yep.
Okay.
So, for all 7 Dirty Outs fans, you can go grab yourself a.
What was that label again?
It's called People of Punk
People
Rock.
of Punk Rock. Okay. I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, they do. They have a bunch of stuff where they do kind of like micro pressings. So that's nice. So if you're interested in hearing, what my pre-Diesel Boy reformation band sounded like, you can check that out. And in fact, some of those songs that are on that recording ended up as songs on Gets Old. So yeah, I can promote that. That would be great. Aside from that, I hope that, if your listeners are living in a city where we're coming, you can, go to our Instagram, or go to our website, and, see the list of dates and, come out and see us. Who knows when, or if we will ever do another full album tour, and if we'll ever play Cock Rock again. So if that's something that sounds cool to you, come out and see us.
Yeah. Well,
and also, thank you for still remembering the band after, taking
Sure.
such a long break. It's,
Well, hopefully some of
we're
those.
very honored that people still remember and want to talk to us and come out to the shows and all that. So,
Yeah, well, hopefully some of those fall tour dates will be more coming down a little more farther south on the East Coast. I'm on the central East Coast, and you'll hit some other areas so everyone can see it.
where are you?
I'm in North Carolina, so near
Okay.
Charlotte. So
Okay.
I don't know if you're
We
going to
did
make it
South
that far.
Carolina. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Outside of that, I know you play guitar. You're not the lead per se guitar, but I always like to ask because my daughter plays guitar and I dabble in it a little bit. I definitely do not call myself a guitar player, but she wanted some effects pedals, and I became a effects pedal addict, if you will. So I always like to ask guitar players if you have a favorite effects pedal, or if you're one that don't use them, other than a tuning pedal. Do you have something that you like, your go-to?
I guess I'm not really a gear guy. I've never been a guy that plays a lot of pedals. Jack has way more pedals on the ground than I have, but and because I'm not, I don't really have leads. I have some octave parts and things, but for the most part, I just have my one tone that I keep for all of it. So, lately, because, I have what's called a fly rig. So I basically have a backpack where I take everything I need in a backpack. I don't bring, I basically have a pedal amp. So Orange, I have a couple of them, but the one I've been using lately is made by Orange. It's basically an amp that fits on your pedal. So it goes straight out of there into a speaker cabinet, and that's my amp. And then I run a Boss Super Overdrive distortion in front of it. kind of a classic, one of the like oldest, most classic kind of distortion pedals. I have other stuff. I've got an Earthquaker Plumes that, which is kind of like a tube screamer kind of circuit that depends what I'm playing through, that I'll sometimes use. But that's it. I basically just run a distortion pedal, or an overdrive pedal, and then the gain on the amp, and that's kind of it. I guess I'm kind of aiming for like a Malcolm Young from AC/DC kind of, more kind of hard rock, classic rock than kind of shredder, kind of more metal tone. Jack has that tone. He plays through a 5150, and he's got the EMG pickups, and he's a shredder. He likes all the shredding stuff, classic kind of, during sound check, it's always a Slayer riff when it's his turn to do his guitar. So, I think it's a good balance, between his kind of metal tone and my kind of classic hard rock tone is kind of what I'm going for. So no, I'm not a big pedal guy. I know, I love to browse on Facebook. There's like a local group for sort of gear swap and all that stuff. And I love to see like the guys who have like, I'm thinning the herd. It's like they've got 50 pedals listed. It's like, how many pedals do you need? How many pedals do you got? But I'm not that guy. Like I don't sit down. When I sit down to play guitar, I'm sitting down to write, not to kind of play guitar. And I'm not a good guitar player. So, my songwriting ability is hindered by my lack of skills as a guitar player, but, serviceable, I guess. I can change chords fast and it's good enough. But I write the song. So, what are you going to do? They got to let me play guitar.
All right. Well, I won't take any more of your time today. I really appreciate you you taking some time out of it's a Friday today, so take some time out before your weekend, and I wish you good luck on the tour, and hopefully we'll see a bunch more dates come out in the fall. And thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Nice talking to you. See ya.
Yeah, good talking to you. Thank you.
Right.
Falling down. I'm falling down. Buckets fall down the room and spin around and round. I start with blood yells, I'm shaking all, it's making funny sounds. I'm falling down. I'm falling down.